This is the part when people try intuitive eating, it doesn't work. They start blaming themselves, right? They start thinking like, I can't even do this gentle approach right. This was supposed to be the anti-diet culture and I can't even do that. What's wrong with me? Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. Today we're going to talk about intuitive eating, what it actually is, why it works for some women, and why it completely backfires for others, and what has to be in place first before true freedom and with intuitive eating, true confidence with intuitive eating is actually possible. So this episode is not about tearing down intuitive eating. Okay, it's about telling you the truth about what intuitive eating actually requires. Okay, because nobody told me that. And to be completely honest with you, I wish that they had, because I think it would have helped so much, because I tried intuitive eating. I tried intuitive eating when I was recovering from bulimia. And I want to be honest with you about what happened, because I think a lot of women possibly have had the same experience and maybe have never heard it talked about out loud. So when I decided to do intuitive eating, when I heard about it, it felt like it was the kindest thing that I could offer myself after years, probably a decade of restriction and just overeating chaos, all the things. Because the messages were like freeing, right? It was like, just listen to your body, eat what you want, trust yourself, right? Like, let the guardrails off, stop being so hyper vigilant. And I wanted so badly for that to be enough. But, and this is only in hindsight that I knew this, I hadn't yet built the self-trust to actually do it, to actually sustain it, to actually be in an intuitive eating relationship with food. So I would give myself permission to eat, and then I would have no idea what to do with how my body responded, which sometimes wasn't great, right? Like sometimes I felt bad. Sometimes I felt scared that I ate too much, right? Sometimes I had a lot of emotional triggers around this beautiful concept of permission. And it made me understand that intuitive eating, as amazing as it is in theory, it's not enough, right? Because the theory can't fix the other part of it. Okay. The theory can't fix the other part of it. And the first thing I want you to understand is what intuitive eating actually is, because it has been so widely misrepresented that most people are either overly idealizing it, I see that a lot, or dismissing it entirely, right? Kind of villainizing it. And neither of those edges of the spectrum are useful. So intuitive eating, it was developed by two dietitians, actual registered certified dietitians, Evelyn Treble and Elise Retch. Hopefully I'm saying their names right. If not, I apologize. And at its core, it's a framework that's built around rejecting diet mentality, honoring hunger, making peace with food, and learning to respect your body's signals, right? It's great. It's a legitimate research supported approach. And I want to be clear about that. But here's what the framework assumes. And the assumption is the issue that I have with it. The framework assumes, and this is the piece that gets left out of almost every conversation, is that it assumes you have access. It assumes you have access to your body signals in the first place. And for women who have a history of emotional eating, disordered eating, chronic dieting, or trauma around food and their bodies, that access is often not there. Not because of something with them that they haven't learned yet, or, they haven't turned the, it's because their nervous system has been in a dysregulated state for so long that the signals themselves have been scrambled. And I recorded an episode, I think we dropped it last week, about hormone balance and overeating. And this is semi-connected to that. And this is what I lived myself, right? When I was in recovery from bulimia, intuitive eating felt like a lifeline, right? After years of restriction, overeating, purging, rules, punishing myself with, workouts, starvation sometimes, the idea of being able of just listening to my body as a treatment plan or as a path to success in weight loss and in, healing my relationship with food felt revolutionary. It felt compassionate. It felt like I could finally just relax some of the guards that I had around myself. So I tried it. I gave myself permission to eat whatever I wanted. I really, did my best to stop labeling foods as good or bad. I tried to tune in, but what I found was I was trying, right? Like there was a lot of effort that was going into this because I couldn't actually hear anything clearly. Nothing was really intuitive, right? It was like a lot of effort. And, I couldn't hear anything clearly. I thought I was hungry when I was really anxious. I thought I was satisfied when I was actually just like dissociated. I'd eat something and then not know how to be with the feelings of that I was feeling afterwards, right? The fullness, the discomfort, the feelings that came up because I hadn't yet rewired the way that I related to myself. I hadn't yet learned how to, sit with a sensation, a thought, a self-talk without immediately reacting to it, needing to manage it, or feeling like it was truth, right? So the permission was real, like I was doing it. I was letting myself do it. So there was the permission piece, but the foundation to actually live happily in that space, it wasn't there yet. And so instead of feeling liberated, I felt a lot more confused, right? More like I was failing again at something that was supposed to be gentle, right? I'd eat things I'd given myself permission to have and then spiral because I didn't have the emotional regulation tools to process what was coming up after I ate that, because I wasn't like authentically okay with not labeling foods good and bad. It was just something I was trying really hard to adapt, but I didn't feel that authentically within myself yet. So, it wasn't authentic. And so the guilt and the shame and the fear, it wasn't gone just because, right? It wasn't gone. And I think it gets confusing for a lot of women because intuitive eating is often presented as the antidote to diet culture. And in many ways it is. But it gets marketed as a starting point when for many women, it's actually the destination, right? You unfold into intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is birthed out of other things that come before it. It's not step one. Otherwise, it's just another version of a diet, okay? Because true intuitive eating requires three things that don't come automatically. Okay, the first is interoceptive awareness, okay? The ability to actually feel and accurately read your body's internal signals. Hunger, fullness, satisfaction, discomfort. And for many people who have spent years overriding these signals through restriction, binging, emotional overeating, this awareness is not accessible, right? It's dulled, it's distorted, and you can't tune into a wavelength that is scrambled. You just can't. The second is nervous system regulation, the ability to be present in your body without needing to escape the present moment. Because intuitive eating means you have to be present, you have to be there emotionally, physically, mentally, energetically for the experience. You have to feel the hunger, you have to feel the fullness, you have to feel the emotions that come up around food without immediately reaching for a coping mechanism, which for most of us is more food. And that requires a regulated nervous system. And regulation is a skill that has to be built, okay, which is such a big focus especially in the invisible weight detox. The third is self-trust, okay? Not just trust that you're allowed to eat, right? That's often what we think like, oh, I want to trust myself. Self-trust, it's not just trust that you're allowed to eat, but a deep embodied belief. It's a new belief system that you can handle what comes up when you do eat it. Right? Trusting yourself with food is not like, I'm allowed to eat this now. I have permission. Self-trust is not permission. It's a deep embodied belief that whatever arises from that interaction with the food, you can handle, right? And that you won't spiral. Your body, you believe that your body's responses are not dangerous. You're able to converse with these signals clearly and choose a direction to bring yourself back into balance that's aligned with your self-value. Self-trust is this feeling that regardless of what happens, you are safe to be present with yourself and it will be fine, right? I have the confidence and the belief that, this might be an uncomfortable moment for me now, but it will be fine in the future, right? This is why, like I said, more permission usually doesn't fix this, because permission without the nervous system foundation, it's sort of like buying someone a car and being like, here, and they don't really know how to drive yet. It's not that the car is dangerous. It's that the person driving it doesn't know how to drive. And I think this is the part when people try intuitive eating, it doesn't work. They start blaming themselves, right? They start thinking like, I can't even do this gentle approach right. This was supposed to be the anti-diet culture and I can't even do that. What's wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong with you, right? You just don't have a foundation for this specific tool. And this tool, because it actually is not about diet culture, it isn't. It actually is rooted in something that's really beautiful and gentle. The thing is that it requires a foundation for it to work. Okay. And, I just want to remind you that if you're watching this on YouTube and this is resonating, please subscribe. This is the kind of conversation that I like to have every single week. I bring in this type of stuff. Obviously, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple as well, you can please subscribe there. That would be amazing. So what do we actually do with this now that we know these things, right? And this is what changed for me and what I see in the clients and the women, because I do work with mostly women, the women that I work with. You've built a good life. From the outside, it looks like you have it all together. You eat clean, you work hard, you take care of everyone, but there's this one area that still feels impossible to master, and that is food. You can eat perfectly all day and still end up in the kitchen at night wondering why you keep doing this. You promise yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow, and I know you mean it every single time. But the cycle, it always finds its way back, especially when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're just tired of being the one that's holding it all together. And I get it because I lived that way for years. And what I learned is this. The problem, it was never about food. It was the pressure underneath it, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, the part of me that never felt safe and secure to just be me. And that's why I created the sober eating sequence. It's a proven 3-phase method that rewires the emotional patterns and the belief systems driving overeating so you can relax, trust yourself around food, and release weight completely naturally, without force and without obsession. Because when your body feels secure, it lets go. The cravings quiet, the self-punishment, it softens, and food, it stops being the thing that you have to fix. This is not another plan. This isn't another rule book. It's a revolutionary transformation for your nervous system, for your body, and for your identity. So join the sober eating movement today. So before food freedom can be authentic and real, right? Because we don't want to perform food freedom that just continues to perpetuate this cycle of inauthenticity, which at the root is one of the core issues of everything. So before food freedom can be real, the nervous system has to be addressed. The emotional patterns have to be understood, and the self-relationship has to be rebuilt. Okay, but it's important to understand that You cannot eat intuitively from a dysregulated state. It's just never going to happen. Okay. When you are in survival mode, when your body signals are filtered through a lens of fight or flight, and this can come from your environment, right? That's why this whole thing is connected, right? Your environment, your eating choices, all these things are connected, right? You can't access intuitive eating, right? Without being in a regulated state, because you're still going to feel these things where you're afraid, hunger feels like a threat, right? Your hunger and fullness signals are not going to feel completely trustworthy to you, right? And no amount of some philosophy telling you that you have permission, quote unquote, to eat everything is going to change that, because the problem isn't the rules you've been following, right? That food is good or bad. It's the state, the emotional state, and the beliefs that you're eating from. And so real food freedom, the kind where you can genuinely eat what you want, stop when you're full, move through your day without food completely occupying every corner of your mental space, that comes from the inside out. It comes from learning to regulate your nervous system, from understanding your emotional triggers, and from rewiring the relationship that you have with yourself and your reactions and your belief systems, not just with food. Okay, so intuitive eating isn't wrong, right? It's not wrong. It's actually like the goal, right? Like it is. You want to get to a place where you intuitively eat, but the thing is, you don't have to work. You don't have to try to intuitively eat. You don't have to take on intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a natural unfolding of regulation, of self-trust, right? It is our natural state. Okay. It's just not the starting point. Okay. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you feel more, confident and just more in the mindset that intuitive eating is something that is there for you, right? It's something that is always there for you. And truthfully, when you start to notice that you are intuitively eating more, that's a really good sign that you're on a really good path towards the healing that you want. Really, like that for me was such a important sign when I started to be like, oh, I'm intuitively doing this. And not because I took it on as an approach, but because it's just happening. All right. So thank you again. Please, if you have not yet, like and subscribe to us, rate us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, leave us a written review. We love that. It's really helping us grow our community. Share this episode with somebody who potentially might be considering intuitive eating or struggled with intuitive eating. And I will see you next time. Thank you for listening. I'm Alana, and I will see you soon.